Now on to Tirreno-Adriatico, where we had a similar stage to yesterday, and even the one in Paris, where it looked like there might be some interesting climbs, but it was probably going to be a sprint 85 to 90% of the time. 170 Ks, 5 Ks 4.5%, 4 Ks 5%, 6.7 Ks 3.6%, but a lot pretty far from the finish. And Pogačar Ewan is here. He ain't going to let himself get dropped on those. I don't think. Tirreno last year, I mean, he's a little bit sick. Anyway, Pogačar in GC lead, Pro Conti break. The UAE pacing, Benji. For who?
Yeah, that was a good question. Ackermann they have as a sprinter. They've got Pogačar for GC. And I was guessing they were doing something for Ackermann because we were at this point already on the top of the last proper hill on the plateau section on top. And therefore, there's not really a hill where they can attack on. So I thought, okay, UAE's just riding it in, pretending they're actually helping out Ackermann, so he's happy about the team. But they actually were planning something apparently, because just before the intermediate sprint game, we saw that Soler attacked straight from that train with Pogačar in the wheel. We had a duo attack. Only one rider from the competition was instantly in their wheel, which was Alaphilippe. Landa panicked and also tried to bridge, but he failed to do so while the three went on. Then Tao Gegenhardt also went and he made the move to Landa. He then dropped Landa and then moved towards Pogačar and was able to bridge towards those three. So we had a four-man group for quite a bit. Gap was 30 seconds at one point with Pogačar, Soler, Alaphilippe, and Hart, yes. And those riders actually fought for the intermediate sprint as well, because that was probably the thing that Pogačar was going for, until he noticed they had a gap and then they kept going. Pogačar took the 5 points there and probably bonus seconds as well. And they had a bit of a gap now. In the peloton behind, a lot of teams missed that. A lot of teams wanted to have a sprint. It was mainly Jumbo that I saw making moves to have one rider at the front, to have that pace somewhat going, so that these four riders don't ride off to a victory here, because it's Pogačar, and we've seen quite a few times if Pogačar goes, then you might not see him again. But this was supposed to be a sprint stage, so a lot of teams would be very happy to catch that rider and those riders at the front. And eventually with 10K to go, that actually happened. But before we get to that point, I want to mention that Alaphilippe was pacing in that four-man group, and it's doubtful whether it's a good thing or a bad thing, because on one end, Alaphilippe pacing makes that the competition behind needs to pace after Alaphilippe. Thus, Quickstep gets stronger in the peloton relative to the competitors that they have there. And then we look at the breakaway, and then he's also making sure that Pogačar has a longer effort if he stays in that breakaway longer. But if he paces too much, then he's putting pressure on Remco Evenepoel in the group behind. So there's a thin line there. What do you think he should have done? Should he pace with those three other riders, or should he not pace with those?
He's probably doing half pulls, I guess, and knew he was going to get caught. I think if it got to a big gap, he wouldn't have paced. Is Alaphilippe Quickstep's best GC rider at this race? I mean, got some long climbs to come on the weekend to Carpegna. I know Evenepoel did a good TT, but yeah, the stage really looks good for Alaphilippe, that Carpegna stage, and I can't wait to see what they do. 6K is 10%. That might even be too hard for him, but there's the descents off it that suit him a lot. So, yeah, probably Pogačar wins it anyway, so it's all a moot point, that stage. But, yeah, I think we're seeing in the 1 week races, when you put Van Aert and Roglic together, or Alaphilippe and Evenepoel together, they're all superstars, and they're not used to playing sort of two-man team tactics, and also a pride thing. Like Alaphilippe at Flanders 2020 is in the break with Van der Poel and Van Aert. It's like, I'll take a pull. I was like, no, you shouldn't do that. So yeah, I don't think it made a big deal in the end. But yeah, it was going to be a sprint. What do you see from the trains? Ineos did the same thing again, Benji. They're using Ganna to basically preserve all the other lead-outs.
Yeah, certainly. They made sure that other lead-outs didn't have to spend the effort initially, and therefore had the riders to do something towards the end. And it kind of counters them as well, because then you've got two riders left, Zwift and Viviani, and you know that if these other trains have more riders, then those riders will probably wave over you towards the end of the the stage in the last few kilometers in the same way that we've seen with Bike Exchange in UAE, where they were at the front, other teams waved over them because Alpecin comes late, Quickstep comes late, stuff like that. And surprisingly, we saw that Jumbo also had support for Olav Kooij today, because yesterday we didn't have that in the UAE Tour. There was some support with riders working for him, but it wasn't necessarily a whole team. And this time around, we had 4 riders, including himself, at the front in a train formation to keep him at the front. So it's good to see that that team is supporting a sprinter that clearly has talent. We've mentioned it yesterday. And next to that, when we look at the other teams, I actually didn't spot too much of Lotto Soudal at the end of this stage. And it started getting clear once with roughly 1.4, 1.3 kilometers to go. I only noticed Ewan, nobody else. So from this point of the race, if he wins this stage, it's not thanks to his lead out, I dare to say, right?
Yeah, and there's one thing worse than having no lead out, and it's fully trusting a bad lead out. But I'm not sure those guys were there. So it was even different to the stage in Saudi where he had 2 guys at like 500 to go and then they didn't move up. He was isolated, but he managed his position a little bit better today. There's a left-hand bend with 250 to go. Guarnieri brought Démare up, who's been nowhere recently, and it was a technical narrow finish yesterday. He brought him up, but again, he finished very, very early. It was like they were missing Sinkeldam. Like when Guarnieri started, it's where Sinkeldam normally starts, and he can't pull forever. Démare's hitting the front with 275 to go, and he doesn't sprint straight away. There was an Alpecin rider. I don't think it was Merlier. I think it was Merlier's lead-out man. It was maybe Stannard, a smaller guy. Démare shelters behind him for a bit. He's got Ackermann on the wheel, then Ewan, Kooij. Kooij's fighting something a little bit for Ewan's wheel, and Démare kicks with 250. It's like it's not cobbles, but it's not tarmac road surface either. We're not allowed to have safe finishes in Tirreno this week, so it's some sort of cobbly finish, but it was at least straight. And Demare's kick was really good, I have to say. Given clear air at 250, really impressive sprint from Démare, able to hold it for a long time. Ewan nearly got sold by Ackermann in this sprint. Ackermann takes aggressively Demare's wheel. Ewan's got his wheel overlapped between Ackermann's back wheel and the barrier, so he has to wait. Ackermann then loses the wheel of Démare with 150 to go, and then Ewan has to restart his sprint to the right of Ackermann, and like Fabio when he slipstreamed Laporte at Kerner, gets into Demare's draft and surges over him in the last 25, 40 meters. And it was Ewan's initial burst. You just see the difference, Benji. When he kicked properly off Ackermann's wheel, like Kooij like couldn't respond and take his wheel. Kooij had to go up the inside, and I'm not sure he could have done much better, actually. But yeah, it's the problem with Ewan is looks so good, it's not replicable. Whatever I said there. He got a bit lucky today.
When it comes to Ewan, we've noticed quite a few times that positioning is the key to getting a competitive result. Competitive positioning leads to the ability to sprint for the victory. And whenever he's in a competitive position, he's likely winning that stage, unless there's a quick-step sprinter that is a top-notch sprinter that has a bit of a gap on him when the sprint starts. Because even if he's in the wheel of the quick-step sprinter, half of the time he does still win. Jacobsen and Kuurne was the other way around, though. But when it comes to Kooij, yeah, he doesn't have that kick like Ewan does initially, and that's how Ewan is able to get that initial gap on the likes of a Kooij. But Kooij was able to get around Ackermann on the left at the same speed that Merlier was trying to come around on the right side. So pretty solid speed on that end. Merlier, yeah, wasn't on it today compared to Ewan and Kooij, but also didn't have the perfect position, I'd argue, because of that Démare train going over on the left side. But when it comes to the non-sprinters today, I want to mention that apparently GC riders lost time today. And there's a 12-second gap in the middle of the peloton, and I'm not really sure why that's the case. Probably a gap opened up between the riders, and the riders that lost time was Mark Parun, Buchmann once again, Richie Porte, Landa, Hindley, Pinot, and Gegenhardt, and Uran. So I'm not sure if that gap will stay until tomorrow. Perhaps it needs to be corrected, but for now, there's a 12-second gap.
Wow. So they've actually counted it. Lopez and Wellens just made it, and Carapaz on the right side of that gap. I hadn't noticed that. Rare to see that actually in a sprint stage at the end like this. Tomorrow, though, we have hopefully the first interesting stage. It's been a slow start to Tirreno, finishing in Belante, 201 Ks, very hilly, like 5Ks, 4% straight out of the neutral zone, then shallow gradient climbs all day, one long false flat descent in the middle before they do a circuit 3 times around Belante, which it finishes with a 4.5K 5.7% climb. It's gradual. It's a bit flatter at the finish, 3% in the last 250, 300 meters. Alaphilippe will be probably the favorite for the stage. I wouldn't be surprised if Pogačar wins it. Or I think Bike Exchange got to go all in for Matthews, Benji.
Oh, should he? I think, yeah, on that finish they should, but are they the team that need to do it? Because,
Yes.
okay, if you say so.
If they don't, then they have to take wins.
You're right at that aspect. And they've also got the riders to control the breakaway here. The question is who can compete with him. Kort had a puncture in the last portion. I also think that the finish is too hard for Magnus Cort Nielsen from the Peloton, from the breakaway perhaps, but
yeah, true.
I don't see it. I'm just going to say that Pogačar wins that stage. And Alaphilippe's here as well, so I don't know. It's not that simple.
I would say normally breakaway, but for someone like Quinn Simmons or Court, Ciccone is here as well. He won't be allowed on the break, obviously, or Narvaez, but I'm not sure people have lost that much time. Like in Paris-Nice, it's still pretty tight. And I do think if you're Bike Exchange, this is the stage you've circled for Matthews. So you should be pacing and trying to win this. If it's a slow climb, steady, and he's in good position, him versus Alaphilippe versus Pogačar should be the ones going for the win, although there's no Conrad here. I'm trying to look for other climby, sprinty boys. There's not that many here. There's Van Avermaet? Nah, probably not. Vendrame.
Question. Does Remco go early?
I mean, this is his sort of stage, isn't it? It's like European Championships. It's 200 Ks too. It's long. It would be the one. I mean, UAE will shut it down. I wouldn't be surprised if UAE sends Soler again on the second to last or third to last climb, just because they seem intent on playing with the Peloton and making other people work. So look out for that again. I think they'll try that, and then Pogačar can sit in the wheels. But I don't see break. I don't see it. Daryl Impey too, got to be mentioned on this sort of finish. They got a good sort of puncher squad with Fuglsang and Brandler there. And as a reminder, today the Tour of Watopia starts. 5 stages of riding on Zwift with 5 new routes, unlocks, and double XP. So your efforts help you level up twice as quickly. But it's going for the next few days. So if you can't get onto the first stage today, there's other stages. I'm going on at 8 p.m. tonight. There's rides going off at regular intervals to match your time. And as always, thanks to Zwift for supporting the podcast. So hopefully a better stage in Tirreno-Adriatico tomorrow. In other news, Remco Evenepoel got a €400 fine. It was banned from driving for 21 days for doing 125 Ks an hour in a 70K zone. So I know what the laws are in Belgium. In Australia, 6 months gone, your license for that, and it's a bigger fine. So, yeah.
Have you gotten fined?
I got fined for speeding. Yeah, but not 55 over. That's 55 over, mate. Like, I've done 12 Ks over and got fined, but 55, that's some serious gas. Apparently, his defense lawyer, according to Vila Flitz, said he was running late for a sponsor meeting after his physio. But yeah, I don't think there's not really much more to say on it. It was in the news. And I was surprised that Belgians' driving rules are that lax. It's a big deal in Australia. So, yeah, you'd be Umi would be driving him around for 6 months if that had happened at the Tour Down Under. But yeah, hopefully we don't see that again, and it's just an isolated incident from Remco. But thanks as always for listening to the podcast. We're going to hop on Zwift for Tour of Autopia Stage 1 now. We'll see you with the doubleheader recap tomorrow. Ciao.